Well, a week ago, I stood here and I spoke to you. A lot's happened in a week. And this little bird, in fact, all these little birds in this bird aviary, have actually played a big role in my life in the last week. I'll explain in a moment. I'll just put this back. There you go, mate. On Monday, I left for Sydney to get a medical procedure that I had no other option about having done. I had in advance sought a medical exemption to come back into Victoria from Sydney, and I'd spoke to the hotline. They told me that the system's overloaded and that the permission would not be back in time, and I just needed to travel and come back to the border with all my documentation and explain that to the police, and they'd let me through. Well, they were very wrong. So on Wednesday, I left my daughter Mandy's place, having had the operation, everything gone well, and I'm looking forward to getting home. And I'm driving all day. I get to the checkout border stop at Cairn River. And as I drove in, the first policeman to see my credentials, I explained to him that I'd applied for a permit, didn't get it yet. I'd been to Sydney, and straight away, he became aggressive, harsh, legalistic, and he said, "You're probably loaded with COVID. You're going to infect all of Victoria. In fact," he said to me, "you're probably threatening my life right now. Go over, park there, and if you don't have it in 2 hours' time," and then he threatened to throw the whole lot of stuff at me. I didn't know what to do. I'd never been in this situation before. I thought, how can an Australian citizen in our own country be treated like this? In my lifetime, I never thought that this would be possible. And here I am parked in the parking bay at the truck stop there at Cairn River, and Coral gets on the phone. She's trying to ring Tim Bull's office to see if they can help, and they can't. There's nowhere you can go to get help on this, nowhere. And eventually, 2 young police officers, a male and a female, walked over to me, and they were the first sign of humanity. And they came over and they asked me about my story. And I'd been so confident before I got to the border that I could explain my story and that I'd get through. I was super confident. Boy, was I wrong. And so, as I told them my story and my need to get home, they were very sympathetic, and they did all they could to support me. They took down all the details, they made phone calls, and they came back, and I'll never forget the look on the female police officer's face. There was just sadness as she said, we can't do anything for you. You've got no option but to turn around and go back to New South Wales. And so, very sadly, I drove back, and fortunately, Kath's daughter Sarah lives at Cooma, and so conversations went on. They invited me to stay in their backyard. They got a 1 acre block on a hill overlooking Cooma, and they said they'd put up like a tent and a trailer camper van thing, and I could stay in this tent. So I arrived there. That night, Wednesday night, I couldn't sleep. I literally felt traumatized in a way I've never known before, and I thought, how can our country get to this place? And it was a place of hopelessness, and I was too overwhelmed to even pray. I had nothing left to even pray. And I didn't get to sleep till about 5 in the morning, and then at 9 o'clock I went straight to the hospital and got a COVID test. And then about 9 o'clock, I rang the Bairnsdale Police Station. Now, the reason I rang is because during the night, I felt like God gave me a strategy. When I was at the border, I'm asking for me as a human being to get, all I want to do is, I don't want to walk the streets of Bairnsdale, I just want to go straight home to self-isolate until the 14 days is up. And as I thought about this through the night, I just felt God whisper to me a different strategy. And I think the issue in life sometimes, we're praying and asking God for the outcome, we should be asking for the strategies. Have a look through the Bible. Over and over again, God gives people strategies. Like, why did Jesus touch a bloke who couldn't talk, touch his tongue to heal him? Like, why? If he can speak to a dead person to come out of the grave, why does he have to slap mud on a blind person's eyes before they see? It's strategy. And so at 9 o'clock, I rang up Bairnsdale Police Station. I didn't ask to speak to the most senior person. I got a first constable on the desk. One of the, in a sense, in the big political scheme of things, not a very high-ranking person in the system. And I asked him if he could help me, and he said no. There's no leeway. There's no give and take in this. The law is what it is, and there's no discretion. But as he listened to my story, I said, it began with me needing to get home, but it's going to develop into an animal welfare problem if I can't get home, because I've got over 200 birds in this big aviary you can see all around me, right? And coral can feed and water them, but as they're starting to breed, they need a special calcium put down through a crop needle into their crop, and it's a special amount, it's a special product, and if it's not given correctly, they die instantly if it gets in their lungs, and no one else can do this. And I said, if I don't get home, we're going to have birds dying slowly, a very painful death. It's now become an animal welfare thing if I don't get home. So he took down all my details, took down my story, and he passed that on up the chain. And twice during the day on Thursday, he rang me to encourage me to say, it keeps going up and up the chain of command in the Bairnsdale Police, in the Victorian Police Force. And by Friday morning, I'd also got a text from someone in Redgum who had directly messaged Tim Bull on his private mobile number and explained the situation. Tim hadn't actually had any information passed on when Coral rang, and he said he didn't know anything about it, but for me to ring back in the morning, this Friday morning, and he would see what he could do to help. So I rang back Tim Bull's office, and his PA was so helpful, but she said there's really nothing. For 18 months they've been trying to help people, and they have no capacity to help. There is nobody to go to. The system has no way of a person in strife getting help. You can't ask anyone. Nobody will make a decision. There's a process, and the process is you apply for a permit. And as they explained to me, there are people dying without loved ones being able to see each other, while the permit process can weeks, and people die. They told me how that right now there are families torn apart through divorce where children and parents are separated, and even though they have all the health reasons to be able to get together, the permit system doesn't work because the permit system is overwhelmed, because everyone is trying to get a permit. There's no staff to staff it. It's now 11 days since I applied for a permit on medical grounds to come back to Victoria. I haven't heard from them. And so on Friday morning, they gave me no hope. But then later in the day, Tim Bull's PA rang back and said, Tim has sent a letter to the Minister on your behalf asking him to have a look at your situation. The day just kept going as normal, lots and lots of phone calls, very stressful, difficult situation, feeling helpless. And yet I can remember saying to Coral in the middle of it, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be in this situation. It was -6 degrees on Thursday night in Cooma. I'm in a tent, -6 degrees, right? And I was told by the police at the Victorian border that I may not ever get back to Victoria till New South Wales is completely free of COVID. Until they are no longer a red zone, I will not be allowed back in. And so I could be looking at months, isolated, unable to get home. And so by lunchtime on Friday, nothing had changed. 12:30, the phone rings. It's a unidentified number. and it's a very, very high up ranked official, a police person in the Victorian police force in Melbourne. Very, very high ranked. And my request had kept going up and up and up to the system. And he rang and asked me, he needed a whole lot of information, he needed emails, and we took an hour and a half putting all this together. And then about 2:30 in the afternoon, he rang me and he said, I'm satisfied with everything you've sent me. All the photos you've sent me on your phone is enough for me to give permission for you to come into Victoria. The problem is, I need it in an email form. What you sent me is not working. You have to get to a computer immediately and send it to me. How? I'm in a tent in a 1 acre block in Cooma. How do you do that? Well, Sarah's husband, Luke, was home. He hadn't been home the day before, but he was home, working from home, from his office in the house where I was staying. And I contacted Luke, and Luke had all the technology, all the computer system, all the know-how. We airdropped all my documents. He sent them as an email attachments to this high-ranking police officer. And about 3:30, I got the text message to say that I could come home. It was just this amazing, wow, really? And I can remember when I left Cooma, I rang my daughter Mandy to tell her I was able to come home. And she said to me, wouldn't it be amazing, Dad, when you got to the border, if that policeman who had treated you very harshly was there and you could come through, and irrespective of how he treated you, you would come through that border crossing. And I said to her, no, I'm not actually, that doesn't interest me. I'm like, what he did, that's the past. Honestly, that doesn't interest me. But I said to her, what would be the icing on the cake is if those two young police officers I think they're from Ringwood, if they were there, if they were manning the roadblock, wouldn't that be great if they could see me come through? Well, as I pulled into Cairn River at 6 o'clock Friday night, it's dark, all the police lights are flashing, there's 8 police all lined up. I pull into the little bay there, and as I pull in, I wind the window down, and here is these 2 police officers that had been so helpful 2 days earlier. And as I wind down the window, the bloke, he says to me, go on through, sir, we were waiting for you. Right, waiting for me. I felt like royalty. I stopped and I thanked them. And I said, you were the only face of humanity that night when everything felt so brutal. And they were so excited to see me get through. And I said to them, you did all you can. You had half an hour to try to get what actually took 2 days of going through to the highest ranking officials in the police in Victoria to give me permission. And you know what? You couldn't do it. But what happened was someone in Bairnsdale Police Station has pushed this through. Someone who didn't know me. Someone who didn't have to do anything. Someone who went out of their way. Someone who is living bigger than themselves. And I know that for some of you, this is first time news. You didn't know what was going on. But for some of you, and we did try to keep it private, but for some of you, when you heard, you did all you could to help. You sent emails. Someone had an idea of bringing Neil Mitchell's program on the radio. You wanted to help, and that's because you're living bigger than just your own needs. And in this situation, I've lived bigger than myself in my whole life. I've been doing what I can for other people, and in this moment, I found that I have so many friends, so many people that care and love me, and they want to do something because I've been sowing into other people's lives. Here was a moment when you were trying to help me. And that's how God's kingdom works. When like Jesus said, if we will seek first his kingdom and this relationship with him, when we will live bigger than ourselves, He can look after all these other things. Do you know, it was the issue of an animal welfare thing that got the attention, the strategy got that attention, that kept moving my story up and up and up and up. And it never got stopped. It kept going till it actually got to someone who had the authority to override DHS, override everything, and give me passage home. But that wasn't in itself enough. I actually needed all the documentation, and I'd done everything by the book. I'd even got a permit to travel into New South Wales and back again, and I carried that with me. Nobody checked that, but I had it. The negative COVID test, everything was okay when they came to scrutinise my story. And I just want to encourage you that, to me, what's happened has been like a minor miracle of biblical proportions. I've experienced what is going on in some people's lives right now, the trauma that people are experiencing. Our world has changed, and there's a brutality that happens. Like, once upon a time, our governments, even if they weren't Christian, they reflected Christian values. But now we have a government that does not reflect Christian values. And without the God factor, a brutality, a harshness, a legalism can come in. And there's no humanity. And the first constable in Bairnsdale that took on my story, and he fought for me and cared about me, I will be forever indebted to him. God used him. And it really helped me understand how that when we, Red Gum, stepped in and helped so many people, 120 different families in the fire recovery, why people, when you're desperate, when someone reaches out to you when you're desperate, it changes your life. A person, I haven't even met him yet, I'm going to meet him, I promise you. Even Bairnsdale Police Station rang me this morning to see if I was okay, to see if I'd got here. That's care above and beyond. They don't know me. They don't know that I'll be sharing this on YouTube and Facebook and out to Never Never Country. They don't know that. They just reached out to a stranger. And you know what? That's how God wants us to live. Living bigger than ourselves for people that at times we don't know. People we do know. People in the fire recovery, like to have $100,000 go through our hands and a team to carry that into people's lives. No wonder there are people that will never forget what we've done for them, because I now know what that feels like. When you're vulnerable, when you have no power, when you can't do anything yourself, when I couldn't even pray. I know you've been praying, and when I left Bombala on Friday, I'm driving and the sun's going down, and in that area the bush is vast and it's open, expansive country, and I felt so small on planet Earth. But I felt like I had a big God who looked after one little tiny speck on this huge planet, me, cared about me, loved me through what you guys are doing, loved me, provided for me through what a policeman's done on the desk in Bairnsdale Station. And I just started singing worship songs all the way from Bombala to Cairn River. I was so exhausted, I'd made a decision I wouldn't speak today. I wouldn't share anything with you today, because I was done. Honestly, I was done. But I woke up this morning and I thought, no, I do need to share this story with you, because it's the time frame of this that's important. It's not just a story, this is now. We all need now stories of God's provision, now stories of what God's done. No use talking about what God did in years gone by. He wants to do things now, and when we live bigger than ourselves, he is able to do that. When Nehemiah was living bigger than himself and he went to the king provided, and Nehemiah said, my God has provided. The world system let me down, but in the world system there are individuals that cared enough, had enough humanity in them to reach in and and fight for me. And the prayer and the support that I felt, the love that I felt has been overwhelming. And I didn't want to go through this, but boy, oh boy, I'm thankful that I have. And it's changed me. It's given me a greater appreciation for when we step out as God's kids and we step into someone else's life and we do something for them that's bigger than our life. We care about another. The impact is immense. It's immense. It's generational. So this morning, what I just shared, it's a bit different. Next Sunday, I've got my brother Ken coming, and he's going to be in Real there in the hub with you, and he's going to be talking about the overcoming fear and anxiety. And I'll tell you, I've been through a roller coaster of emotions. On Friday, while we're getting a sniff that I might be able to get out, I might be able to be free, but we've got to get all these things done straight away, and I need a computer, or where's a computer? Like, it's been so stressful. So how do we overcome situations when we are overwhelmed with fear and anxiety? And Ken's going to be sharing that with you next week. It's going to be a great week. I won't be there, but I'm going to be with you physically the week after. I've got to go through 2 weeks lockdown, then I'm out of here, and boy oh boy, I'm going to be glad to see your faces. And so I just thank you. It's a bit of an unusual morning in what I've shared, but I want you to see the God factor, the miracle factor, the fact that when we put God first, He can look after the detail that we can't. And I was talking to someone on the phone on Saturday, and he said, your life seems to be, you fall into these things, and somehow you're in situations that others don't find themselves in, and yet somehow God gets you out, which is quite amazing. And that's true, but it's for all of us. God wants to care for all of us. So back to you, Dave, and I appreciate, Dave, your worship leading. You're a champion. I'll see you all soon. Thank you.